Okay. Okay. We're holding Parshas Pekudei, Parshas Hachodesh. I'm going to try, no promises, I'm going to try to get to Parshas Pekudei and Parshas Hachodesh. Well, let's start with Pekudei. Thanks so much. I feel especially like achrayas that we should talk about the Parshas that are not spilling out, dripping with easy pickings for people to say, because it's important for us to realize and to be mechanech ourselves, to realize the importance and the nitzchias and the endless limudim that there are from every part of the Torah. Some are more accessible to us than others. The Hachodesh has a ha'ara contrasting the pasuk about the paroiches between the Parshas Truma and Parshas Pekudei. So one second here. Okay, so in Parshas Truma, it describes the paroiches that's separated between the Kodesh and the Kodesh HaKadoshim as follows. Perek Chav Vav Pasuk Lamed Gimel. V'nosato es haparoiches tachas hakrosim. You should put the paroiches under the hooks. Those are the 50 krosim that were mechaber, the two halves of the oihel on top of the Mishkan, the coverings of the Mishkan. So under the krosim, you put the paroiches. The hevesa shama mi beis la paroiches eis aroin ha'edus. You should bring the aron inside the paroiches. The hivdila haparoiches lachem bein kodesh ubein kodesh hakodashim, and the paroiches should separate between the kodesh and the kodesh hakodashim. So if you look at this pasuk, this description in Parshas Truma, it sounds like you hang the paroiches and then you put the aron inside. That's what it sounds like. Okay, that's Parshas Truma. What does it say in Parshas Pekudei? Parshas Pekudei, it says what seems to be an opposite description. The pasuk says, Perek Mem pasuk Chaf Aleph, Vayovei es ha'aron el ha'mishkan. Bring the aron into the Mishkan. And then Vayosem es paroiches ha'masach, then place the paroiches. Vayosech al aron ha'edus, and will be like a schach, a covering, on the aron kasher tziva Hashem es Moshe. So which one is it? Was the aron brought in, like it says here, and then the paroiches put up? Or was the paroiches put up, and then the aron put in, like it says here, v'nosatas ha-paroiches, ve'veis ha-shamam mi-beis la-paroiches as aron ha'edus. So I think that I want to stel zu a ha'ara that my Rosh Hashiva made on a Tisha B'Av Maimer. I think we talked about this concept a little bit at Tisha B'Av time, that one of the things about Tisha B'Av is that the people that taught about Tisha B'Av, we learned a lot about the Beis HaMikdash and the Mishkan then. Because to be misabel properly on the Beis HaMikdash, you have to know what the Beis HaMikdash was, what a Makom Hashras HaShechina is. So there's a lot in the Sfarim. A lot of times it's an interesting address. You don't expect to be learning in Yonei Tisha B'Av when you're learning about the Mishkan or the Beis HaMikdash. But if you think about it, it's very logical. It makes a lot of sense to be doing that. And he pointed out once in a Tisha B'Av Maimer, the Lashon of the Pasuk in Parshas Truma when it describes the function of the paroiches, that it says v'hivdila haparoiches lachem bein kodesh uvein kodesh hakadashim, that the paroiches will separate for you between the kodesh and the kodesh hakadashim. And he was medayek from the word lachem. The word lachem seems to be extra. The paroiches separates between the kodesh and the kodesh hakadashim. What's v'hivdila haparoiches lachem bein hakodesh uvein kodesh hakadashim? So he said a yesod which is, if you think about it, it's very yored into very challenging times of our life, that he says that the emes is that if there was no paroiches, there's no hashras hashchina in the Kodesh HaKodashim. We human beings are not able, it's not appropriate, or nor are we able to interact directly with the Shechina. So if we want to have this closeness with the Shechina, that we could, so to speak, share a makayim with the Shechina, we need a paroiches. The paroiches is not separating us from Hashem. Adarabah, it's through the paroiches that we have a relationship with Hashem. Without a paroiches, we can't invite the Hasharas HaShechina to be there. So you think it's being mavdil between me and you? No, by putting up a curtain, you're making it that we could share this makayim together. And isn't that beautiful in the pasuk? V'hivdila ha-paroiches lachem. The paroiches will separate for you. I'm doing this for you. Don't think I'm separating from you. I'm coming close to you by putting up a separation. Bein kodesh u'bein kodesh hakodashim. The Ramban in Parshas Truma says, on this pasuk of putting the Aron in, the Ramban is oimid on this ha'ara, and the Ramban says that the psukim in Parshas Truma, I'm going to say it in my own words, you could look up the way he says it, I'm saying it a little bit more accessible for us than the words that he uses, but he says klar, that the way that the psukim describe the Binyan HaMishkan in Parshas Truma is not the way it happened. The way it happened is what happened in Parshas Pekudei. Parshas Pekudei describes that this is what they did. Parshas Truma, if I wanted to be magdir in terminology that we understand, I would say that there's tzvei dinim. That Parshas Pekudei is the Seder Hadavar, and Parshas Truma is the Tzuras Hadavar. Meaning Parshas Pekudei is the way it played out, L'maisa. Parshas Truma is an explanation of what the matziv is. Now, could we put an Aron into the Kodesh HaKodashim if there's no paroiches? No. So Hagam, the way that we did it in Parshas Pekudei, was to put the Aron in and then to hang the paroiches. But in Parshas Truma, where the description is not the Seder Advarim, but the Tzuras Hadavar, only because there's a paroiches can there be an Aron. So the Seder of the way it says in a Parshas Truma is put up the paroiches. And then it says, and then you could place the Aron inside. It doesn't mean that it's going to happen in that order, but it means that's the sugya here. You want an Aron, you have to put up a paroiches. Now, in how to do it in the most bakavadika oifen in setting it up, the way they did it is the way it says in Parshas Pekudei. They brought in the Aron and they hung the paroiches. But in the Tzura, no. You want an Aron, you have to hang the paroiches. Then you can put an Aron in. That's in the Tzuras Hadavar. But in the Seder of the Binyan, it was first the Aron and then the paroiches. And it's very meduyik because and I spoke about this by Shal Shudas a few weeks ago, that the lashon of the pasuk in Parshas Truma is v'nosata es haparoiches tachas hakrosim. You should put the paroiches under the krosim. So you could look at it as time. It's a bar makim. There was this row. When you looked up to the ceiling of the Mishkan, you saw a row of 50 hooks. Okay? Those 50 hooks combine the 5 urios on one side to the 5 urios on the other side. Right? And the paroiches was set up, if you do the math, the way it worked out, the paroiches was set up under the krosim. Because even though it was half, I'll just explain very briefly, just so you should understand. The Kodesh HaKodashim was not halfway through the room. The Kodesh HaKodashim was, what was it? It was 10 amas? 10 amas in. But the way that the Mishkan, the covering of the Mishkan, called the Mishkan, was set up, is that it went from the ceiling on one side down to the floor on the other side. So its middle was towards the end of the ceiling, right? You understand what I'm saying? So that's why the krosim ended up halfway through. If the covering starts there and goes across the ceiling and down the wall, so where's halfway of that? It's towards the end of the ceiling. That's why the paroiches hung underneath the krosim. But come on, the Torah doesn't need to say hang it under the krosim. If the Torah says hang it under the krosim, there must be some kesher between what's happening with what the Krosim represent and what the Paraychas represent. No, if that's the Mara Makim that the Torah gives in its Tzuras Hadavar, it must be telling you something about what's happening. Well, what does it say about the Krosim? The Krosim has 5 on one side and 5 on the other side, connected together with 50 Krosim. Yeah, that's very reminiscent. There's something else you might think of that has 5 on one side and 5 on the other side. And those are the Luchai Sabris. And as we know, that when we have 5 on one side and 5 on the other side, it represents the relationship between Klal Yisrael and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ben Adam Lamakayim, Ben Adam Lachaveri. We've talked about this, that by the Luchais, it says Luchas Ksiv, because they were shovin, the Luchais were equal, because it represents the connection between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Klal Yisrael. The 50 Krasim, the Svarim say, represent the 50 Sha'arim, that we know that the 50th is the Achdus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the oneness of Hashem. And the Pasuk says, when it says to put the Krasim, to connect it, the Lashon of the Pasuk is V'haya HaMishkan Echad. So you have these Krasim, which represents this coming together into one. V'haya HaMishkan Echad. Oh, you have a Havamina that the Paraychas is separating between us? Hang it under those Krasim that make it Echad. Now you'll know what the Paraychas does. The Paraychas is hanging under the part of the Mishkan, Asher Olav Nemar V'haya HaMishkan Echad. Because the Havdalah is there so that we can connect. This may sound like Stam a Pshat in 2 Psukim in the Parsha, and for that alone, of course, it's more than worth it to be able to have a Pirush in the Psukim. But if you think deeply, you could think about our lives and think about the fact that we have various paraychas in our life. Things, difficulties that we have, challenges that we have, disappointments that we have, that sometimes we feel like those things are being mavdil between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem is showing me upon him zayafos, lo yaleinu, it feels like. There's a tsar, there's a disappointment. And it feels to me like HaKadosh Baruch Hu is being mavdil between me and him. And the Paraychas represents that Havdalah. But if the Paraychas represents the Havdalah, isn't it something to think about? That sometimes Dafka in the area that we feel like that's an area where HaKadosh Baruch Hu is separating himself from us, that's our invitation to become close to him. Because that's the makom that we can daven to him. And we can have a dialogue with him. And we can maintain our stubborn connection to him, even when we're being shaken up. And Klal Yisrael sometimes rises to the challenge of a challenge. And there's a threat, whether it's a personal thing or a communal thing, that something happens and it's a big tzara, like when we talk about, and how could we not continue to talk about the hostages and the matzav in Eretz Yisrael, that matzav is a paraychas. It's a separation. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's a harchaka from us. It's a tzara. But look how much connection came out from it. How many tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of kapitlach tehillim. How many people, if you're listening to the stories, how many people are returning to Yiddishkeit because of it? Chas v'shalom, please do not accuse me of saying that we know why it happened, or anything like that. Those hanestoros l'Hashem Elokeinu. Well, it's a tzara, and we don't know why it happened. That's up to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I'm just analyzing that the very thing that seems to be a havdalah is also connecting us to the Shechina. How many tears have we cried? How many, I don't know if I mentioned to you here, but my son Chaim was telling me, he's sitting in Philly, and his Rosh Hashiva, Rabbi Yodi Svei, Rabbi Eliya's son, he says, since October 7th, it's been a while. He says, he's still Moired Demayis when he talks about it. He never met any of the hostages. None of them went to Philly. Okay? That's not the point. It was an opportunity. And you know what that did to a whole yeshiva? You have a whole yeshiva of intense yeshiva bachar that are being lun ba'imkan shel sugyas, and they're watching their Rosh Hashiva. It so moved me. They're watching their Rosh Hashiva Keseder cry because on the other side of the world there are Yidden very different than them that are in a matzav of tzara, but they're his sisters and brothers. And that's yes, it's a parayches. It's separated between Klal Yisrael and the Shechina. But didn't it also bring together? Wasn't it also Makaribas La'avinu Shabbat? Didn't it make us think twice when there is anti-Semitism going on around us? Doesn't it make us think twice if we belong in this country? Doesn't it make us think twice if we belong in this gullus? Doesn't it make us identify ourselves with who we are, with our avos, with greater strength? So there's a very tifa meaning when you have a paroiches that's lachem. V'hivdila ha-paroiches lachem bein ha-kodesh u bein kodesh ha-kadashim. Okay, that's Parshas Pekudei. Let's spend a few minutes talking about Parshas Hachodesh because Yantif is coming. We can't wait till Pesach to start thinking about Pesach. And Parshas Hachodesh heralds that Yantif is coming, and it's a wake-up call for all of us. Some of us are, probably all of us are so busy with our schedules, with our regular sdarim, with trying to make a parnasa, trying to put some food on the table, that it's hard to imagine taking any extra time. But the truth is, I got a call from a younger man that I know that's a very, very, very precious younger man, and he told me that for whatever various reasons for this year, he's going to be having a Seder alone with his wife. He has a child, he's very young, but he's going to have a Seder alone with his wife this year. And he was talking to me about, how do you do a Seder right? And we made up to talk about it tomorrow. But I told him the first thing to know is that it takes some investment beforehand. You have to be prepared to put in time. So, in a way, I think sometimes about the Yeshiva Ketana Rabbeim that are teaching the Haggadah from who knows when before Pesach. I'm a kind of them a little bit, no? A little kind of them. They're holding, even the Moras, they're holding in Pesach. Before Pesach, for us, you have to be careful. Be careful that it doesn't come the night of B'dikas Chametz, and you're like, oh, right, Kol Chamira. Oh, it says Kol Chamira. Oh, right, there's something called Kol Chamira. Right, let's get into the sugya. Let's roll up our sleeves, whether it's in halacha or lamdus or machshava or mosar. But let's get into the sugya. Parshas Hachodesh is the first mitzvah that Klal Yisrael was given, and as Rashi says in the beginning of the Torah, right, the Torah hayaroi lahaschel asatayra me'achodesh hazeh lachem. That's the first mitzvah. And it's important to think about why, of all mitzvahs, that's the first mitzvah. Of all the mitzvahs, maybe Amunah should be the first mitzvah. There are other things that you would tefillah, I don't know, Kiddush HaChodesh. That's the thing. Why is that the first mitzvah? Why is that the mitzvah that they needed, not just to do when they come out of Mitzrayim, but in order so that they can come out of Mitzrayim? Because that's a big difference, right? Most mitzvahs are mitzvahs that we makayim now that we came out of Mitzrayim. But Parshas Hachodesh we were given while we were still in Mitzrayim. The obvious understanding is that this is necessary to be malava us out of Mitzrayim. So that means that there's something in Parshas Hachodesh that has very much to do with Yitzias Mitzrayim. It's not stam a random mitzvah. So I know some of you have been here over the season while we went through the Parshas of Shemais, and some haven't. I'll try to say it in a way that's Shava L'chal Nefesh, but I really want to just draw your attention to a Yesod that we've been discussing in various Oifanim over this winter, and that is like this: Hachodesh Hazel Lachem Rosh Chodashim. This Chodesh is for you, Rosh Chodashim. Rishain hu lachem l'chad sheyashana. There's a riboy of lachems in this pasuk. I think the Aruch HaShulchan points it out. There's a Chodesh hazeh lachem, rishain hu lachem. And part of the idea behind this hadgasha that the Chodesh is ours is that there's an element of Kiddush HaChodesh that represents the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put the Olam HaTeva into our hands. That Klal Yisrael is higher than the Teva. A me'ain of what HaKadosh Baruch Hu did to Avram Avinu when he lifted him above the stars. It's very meaningful to be lifted above the stars because everything comes through the stars, right? They used to look in the stars to see what was going to happen. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu lifted Avram Avinu above the stars to tell him Ein Mazel Yisrael, right? Avram Einoi Moiled, Avraham Moiled. Don't be concerned with what the world of Teva tells you because you're higher than it. Klal Yisrael was given that koyach of above the Teva in this mitzvah of Kiddush HaChodesh. First of all, the Levana represents that Chiddush in the Bria, because the Levana is from the few things in the Bria that are not constant, that there's a constant renewal, a constant recreating. So of course it is part of the Teva and is a natural explanation for that, but within the picture of the Teva, the Seder of the Chiddush HaLevana represents, it's like the siman in the world of Teva for the fact that there's a creator, that there's a beginning, that there's a Seder of his Chadshus of the Bria, that the Bria needs to renew itself, or that HaKadosh Baruch Hu needs to renew the Bria. That bookmark in the Teva is the Levana. And we know that Klal Yisrael's ability to be Mekadesh the Chodesh is an incredible power over the world of Teva. Right? The Chazal tell us, and this is brought in Shulchan Aruch. This is brought halacha l'maisa in Shulchan Aruch, that if Chazal will paskin Kiddush HaChodesh and they will make a mistake, the truth is, it says even atem afilu meizidim, even if they do it, they have some cheshbon, they do it on purpose. Even if they made a mistake and they make it Rosh Chodesh, that b'sulei ha'chayzrim, that there's an inyan that the teva will conform to what Klal Yisrael said. You know what that means? That the teva will conform to what Klal Yisrael says. This is brought in Shulchan Aruch. In Hilchas Nida, where there's something called the Vest HaChodesh that goes by the day of the month. There's a big conversation in the Rishonim how to measure Vest HaChodesh. Maybe it should be Vest HaChodesh based on the Moilad. Why is it based on the day of the month? The day of the month has nothing to do. It has to do, but the day of the month is not directly negeh to the moon. It should go based on the Moilad. I forget all the cheshbonis of that shita, but that we should be aware of what the Moilad is. And I think the Shach there says that we don't paskin that way, and that it goes by the day of the Chodesh. And b'sulei ha'chayzrim, the teva of an isha, it reflects when Chazal said it's Rosh Chodesh. It's just unbelievable. And it's not like a chassidish avart. That's how we paskin in Shulchan Aruch. We paskin that Klal Yisrael has a koyach over the teva. This is the first mitzvah that Klal Yisrael was given. The reason for that is because that's really what Yetzias Mitzrayim was here to declare. Yetzias Mitzrayim was here to declare that the world exists for Klal Yisrael. B'shvil Yisrael shanikra reishis, that the world is here for Klal Yisrael, and therefore the world is subservient to Klal Yisrael. And while there are chukei hateva that can't be moved, but when Klal Yisrael needs it, when it's for the purpose of Klal Yisrael, they can be moved. And that's why you find this constant ratzah, and you find through the Parshas of Yetzias Mitzrayim, v'yodu Mitzrayim ki ani Hashem, right? V'yodu Mitzrayim ki ani Hashem. Mitzrayim should know that I am Hashem, Shem Havaya. Shem Havaya means that I am the creator. What does that mean? So this, I'm not going to say it as ba'arichos, because we once spent a whole shir on it, but the Sfarim tell us that Yetzias Mitzrayim was not physically possible. It's not the pshat that it happened b'derech nes, wow. The pshat is that it could not possibly happen b'derech hateva. It wasn't possible, not from ruchnias dikakaychas and not from gashmias dikakaychas. Mitzrayim was the most powerful country by far in the world, and in ruchnias they were the most powerful, kishuf and all of these things, and that in Nisan, you remember this? That in Nisan they're even more powerful than the whole year. And that Tesvav Nisan B'chatzais Halayla is the strongest ummah in the world, strongest month, strongest moment. It is impossible. There are two formulas. It's impossible that there should be a derech hateva, that they could come out of Mitzrayim. It's impossible. And Dafka then, Klal Yisrael came out of Mitzrayim, B'chatzais Halayla. Why? To show, I didn't understand this when I was younger. I've been learning this for years. And I always loved saying this over. And I said it over and I didn't understand it. Because I thought that what I was saying was, it shows how powerful Hashem is. It shows that HaKadosh Baruch Hu breaks the teva for Klal Yisrael. And I didn't realize what I was saying. What it really means is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was saying, this is what I created the world for. I am the creator of the world, and this is what I created the world for. And that's the declaration that we say when we came out of Mitzrayim. It's a declaration that there is nothing else. This is the entire Tachlis Abriya for Bishvil Yisrael, Shanik Rereshis. And that's why we say in the Haggadah, Ani v'loi malach, Ani v'loi shliach or hashaliach, Ani v'loi saraf. I took them out of Mitzrayim, not a malach. What's the point that it was I and not a malach? Okay, on some level it's a certain level of ava. HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chvoidei uva'atzmai took us out. It's an expression of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's ava, but it goes much deeper than that. It's because the malach couldn't take us out, and the saraf couldn't take us out, and even the shaliach, who apparently is a very, 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 very powerful malach, also couldn't take us out. The only one that was able to take us out was HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Anihu v'lo yacher. Only me. But the point is, v'yodu Mitzrayim ki ani Hashem. You see from day one, right? The first kfira of Pari is mi Hashem asher eshma b'koilei. Is this rejection of Hashem? That was the point. Who is Hashem? Okay, we have to daven Ma'ariv. We'll continue this another time, but let me just say this: that as we get close to Pesach, we should realize that Yantiv, the Yantiv of Pesach, besides for the mitzvahs that we have to be Mekayim, and even besides for all the Divrei Torah that we want to learn and understand, there's a change that happens within us when we go through a Pesach. And that is that we become re-energized to do what we came here to do. Because we recognize that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created this world because I am here. And because I have a job to do. And Pesach reminds us, it charges us up towards our mission, to what we're here for. The Yetzias Mitzrayim could not happen. HaKadosh Baruch Hu broke the rules of the Bria, which only the creator of the world could do. Right? That's the point. That only the Boirei could go lahepech of the Bria. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted it to be clear that this is my Klal Yisrael. This is my Klal Yisrael. This is why I created the world. So as we go in Be'ezer Hashem to Parshas Hachodesh and to Rosh Chodesh Nisan and ultimately to Yantiv, HaKadosh Baruch Hu should be able to be HaKadosh Baruch Hu should be machazik us to be able to saturate ourselves with the right chizuk and hisayrus to be able to use the Yantiv of Pesach properly Be'ezer Hashem to motivate us weiter and weiter in our avodas Hashem. Yashikayach.